Hello again everybody and welcome along to a brand new episode of the Supercup show here on SimNews.TV, where we take a look at the round just gone by in the GPVWC Supercup with analysis of qualifying, race 1 and of course race 2. So, as you may or may not know, the Supercup is the second rung of the career ladder in the GPVWC. Formula Challenge is below it, Super League is above it, and it really is a proving ground for the champions of tomorrow's Supercup. A lot of successful drivers here have gone on to have great Super League careers, so keep your eyes on this category because it could just prove to have a future Super League champion in it. I'm Joshua Anderson and I'll be taking you through what exactly happened when the GPVWC Supercup met the Valencia street circuit in Spain. So, the Spanish Grand Prix round the Valencia street circuit, that's not something that's happened in Supercup before, but it happened for the very first time last round, and while they proved in the qualifying what a tough circuit it is and just how close the racing can be around it. The top 13 cars separated by just over 1 second. That is just how close the field was when qualifying happened. But ultimately, it was Boy Milan for TG Racing who came out on top. And I'm sure the Spaniard at the time would have been very, very happy with that result. Especially so considering his teammate qualified right behind him. Edgar Ruiz would take second place in the qualifying grid, though he would have a 5-place penalty to serve, so he would not get to take that. He would start from 7th place, thereby promoting Dennis Jordan for Evolution Motorsports up to effective second, even though he qualified 3rd in the actual qualifying session. Then you go down the grid further and you see the likes of Antonio Hilanovic in 4th, Whoopke Hoekstra in 5th, a lot of the teams and drivers who you would expect to be up the front, but someone who you wouldn't expect to be so far down in qualifying in 6th place is Alex Siebel from Motorforce GP. That might seem like a little bit of a disappointment and it would prove to be the start of a slightly testing Spanish Grand Prix for the German. Jeffrey Fournier will find himself in 7th place directly behind Siebel, and then it would be Dino Paolini in 8th place. Tobias Politek would follow in 9th, and Jason Muscat would round out the top 10 for Zederic Racing. Stefan Ruhl would be 11th for Deltec, and then 12th would be Dawe Tapa, Jason Muscat's teammate, in 12th. 10th and 12th places then for the Zederic cars. Given their standing in the championship, one might assume that's a bit of a disappointment, but it wouldn't turn out to be all bad for the English team. Deltec Racing were without James Johnson this time around, Rusty Stefano deputising for the Englishman, and Stefano will qualify 16th with Matt Strand ahead of him in 15th place, then Edward Batalla and Carlos Fernandez ahead in 14th and 13th respectively. Sandeep Chowdhury would be slightly further down the order than one might anticipate in 17th place for Hinds Motorsport, Rob Mason following him in 18th place for Epic Racing. Jordan Weeks would complete the Hinds sandwich in 19th place, followed by returning Ryan Walker in 20th place for Satellite Racing. While it may not have been the best qualifying session in the world for the Scotsman, I'm sure that he would have still had high hopes going into the race. Gerard Batalla would be in 21st place for Racing Team Shorten, followed by the 2 ST cars of Dominic Foster and Mark Fuller, then the 2 Cosmo Psyche cars of Gerrit de Vries and Andrzej Pestov. So Cosmo rounding out the order in qualifying, just adding to their woes really in the Supercup so far. But even for the likes of ST and Cosmo at the back, it was still going to be a reasonably promising race. So on to race 1 then, and this really was the race that everybody wanted to win, the 33-lap feature race, and of course one mandatory pit stop involved too, so strategy came into play as well. Every driver knew that the Valencia street circuit was going to be difficult, and there was 6 drivers who didn't make it to the end of the race. Andrzej Pestovs was one of them in the Cosmo Psyche car, and so was Sandeep Chowdhury in the Hinds Motorsport. Then Rob Mason in the Epic Racing, Dawe Tapa in the Zederic Racing car, and Dino Paolini in the Medric all failed to finish. But the big surprise was Alex Siebel did not finish the race after 18 laps, and after the domination he has put down in the Supercup so far, that came as a big shock to the German and his competition. It was a great race ultimately, and it was won by none other than Antonio Hilanovic for Fanatic Drake Racing, taking his first Supercup victory and Drake's first Supercup victory as well, so big times for the Welsh outfit. Whoopke Hoekstra will finish second in the Medric car, followed by Dennis Jordan for Evolution Motorsports, then Boy Milan dropping 3 places from pole position to finish 4th for TJ Racing. Jeffrey Fournier would gain a place to finish 5th for Epic Racing in what would be a very consistent weekend for the Frenchman. Then it would be Jason Muscat, 2-time race winner this season for Zederic Racing. Then Tobias Politek would be 7th for Evolution Motorsports. Matt Strand was one of the really hard chargers this race, gaining 7 places from his starting position. He went up from 15th to 8th, and he was followed by Edgar Ruiz in 9th place, Wesley Stefano in 10th, another significant charger as well, up 6 places from 16th. Edward Batala would be in 11th for a Racing Team Shorten, followed by Ryan Walker, who gained 8 places from 20th place to get himself into the points. Gerard Batala came from 21st to 13th, matching the Scotsman's achievement. Stefan Ruolt had a very testing race, the Formula Challenge runner-up from last year, finishing 14th this race, only 2 points for the Dutchman. Mark Fuller rounding out the points in 15th place, and then Jordan Weeks, Gerrit de Vries, the only 2 drivers to finish that did not score points. So, looking at those results, the big takeaway really is Alex Siebel's dominance doesn't seem as big a thing anymore. He's proven that he's vulnerable as anyone else. He did not finish race 1, and he would have to go on a massive charge in the second race if he was going to make up for this in any capacity. And of course, Gerrit de Vries with another solid Supercup race, really establishing himself as a driver that can be depended on in what would be his second round in Supercup this season, having raced at Shanghai with ST Racing, now moving to Cosmo for this race. And, well, Ryan Walker proving that he still has it with a 12th place and 4 very respectable and well-earned points. Well, if race 1 was good, then race 2 was always going to be better. A very frenetic race with only 19 laps this time, and the reverse grid coming into play as well. And the number which would be picked for the reverse grid, it's between 6 and 10 per race. It would be number 8, which meant Matt Strand would be rewarded for his charge up to 8th place with reverse grid pole. And speaking of the number 8, that's exactly where the American would finish, dropping 7 places to finish 8th place and gaining 8 points. Maybe Matt Strand should adopt 8 as his lucky number, because they obviously seem to like it at Valencia. The spoils, though, would be taken by Tobias Polacek for Revolution Racing, who held off Jason Muscat in the ZRX Racing car, denying the Maltese a 3rd win this season, and, well, forcing him to finish 2nd. Dennis Jordan would finish 3rd in Evolution Motorsports, so a 1-3 for the German team, and that would really prove to be beneficial in their championship challenge. Boyer Milan would finish 4th for TJ Racing, followed by another 5th for Jeffrey Fournier in the Epic car, only dropping 1 position from his start grid, but 2 5th places. Very respectable for Jeffrey Fournier indeed. Really starting to show his talents here as a potential Super League candidate, and I think a lot of Super League teams should be watching Jeffrey Fournier with a keen eye, because he could definitely surprise a lot of people. Alex Siebel knew coming into this race he had to achieve something good, and achieve something good he did. 10 points in a 6th place, kind of making up for the DNF in the first race, though I imagine he'll still be annoyed that he didn't make the end of the first race though. Edgar Ruiz would get a very respectable 7th place for TJ Racing, and 9 very well earned points for him too. Stefan Ruolt, finishing behind Matt Strand, would finish 9th for Deltec, so again a recovery for Ruolt after a not so good race 1. He'd be followed by Dino Paolini, who came up from 23rd on the grid to finish 10th, a net gain of 13 places, and it goes to show really that you can never write Dino Paolini off from any race. Sandeep Chora finished in 11th place for Hinds Motorsport in what would be another very high gaining race for the Indian driver, 9 places gained for him. Then Antonio Helanovic, race 1 winner, would finish just 12th in race 2, 4 places lost from his starting position. Wesley Stefano would follow in the Deltec car in 13th place, followed by Gerard Patala in 14th place in the Racing Team Shorten car, and then Gerrit de Vries earning a point for Cosmo Psyche in 15th place. So again, de Vries really starting to show his talent in Supercup and proving himself to be someone who can score points and at the same time be a very reliable driver. There was even more DNFs than the first race this time around. Edward Batala, Rob Mason, Andres Pestos, Ryan Walker, Jordan Weeks, David Tapper and Whoopie Hoekstra all failing to make the finish, with Carlos Fernandez and Mark Fuller in 16th and 17th place, again the only drivers to finish that did not score points. But how does all this brilliant racing actually affect the Supercup Championships? Well, Jason Muscat leading the Drivers' Championship coming out of Valencia on 122 points, and just 5 points behind him is Dennis Jordan. So a very close run battle between these two going on at the moment. You have to look 21 points behind to find Dino Paolini though on 96 points, and he is being given a really big run here by Alex Siebel, who was just 2 points behind him in 4th place. 3 wins from his first 3 races, but he hasn't folded up since, and he'll be kicking himself because he could have probably been ahead of Paolini had he just finished race 1 at Valencia. Tobias Polacek is in 5th place in the championship on 87 points, and then 6 points behind him in 6th place is Stefan Ruolt for Deltec Racing Team. So Ruolt in his first season in Supercup definitely proving himself to be a decent force here, and well, capable of scoring podiums as we've seen in Australia and Shanghai. Antonio Hranovic won his first Supercup race and now stands 7th in the championship as a result on 77 points, and he's followed by Jeffrey Fournier, 2 points behind in 8th place. Wipke Hoekstra is 9th at the moment on 67 points, and then Boya Milan on 55 rounds out the top 10 in the driver's standings. Edgar Ruiz is 11th on 44, then Dawi Tapa in 12th place is on 39 points. 30 points go to Matt Strand, who's in 13th place, followed by the brothers Patala, Gerard then Edward in 14th and 15th on 28 and 22 points respectively. Then you've got the drivers who, for the most part, haven't done all the races. Ride Kilk 16th place, Wesley Stefano 17th, followed by Michael Barnard, Carlos Fernandez and Rob Mason rounding out your top 20. And the only drivers not to score points at this moment, Ben Willis, Jordan Weeks, Dominic Foster and TJ Halsemer. In the team's championship, it's Evolution Motorsport leading affairs at the moment on 204 points from Mejerick Racing on 163, but 2 points behind Mejerick Ozederic on 161 points. So very, very close run battle for second at the moment in the teams, even if the lead is currently firmly Evolution's. Multiforce GP are currently in 4th place in the standings, and even though they've got 3 wins to the name, 103 points is still very respectable, but hopefully they can pick up the pace and challenge the top runners for potentially the Supercup Teams Championship, because they seem to have a very strong lineup this year. TG Racing are 5th place at the moment on 99 points, haven't quite broke 100, but I can guarantee they will by the next round. Then Daltech Racing Team in the first ever Supercup season are 6th, so a very good solid result from the South African outfit. Epic Racing are currently in 7th place, followed by Drake Racing in 8th, and there's not much between those either, so that could be a battle that heats up throughout the course of the season as well. Satellite Racing currently 9th in the standings with 52 points, then 2 points behind his racing team Shorten on 50 in 10th place. Then there's a big points jump to Hinds Motorsport, 12 points for them in 11th place in the standings, and ST Racing joining them in that points total. 12th place though, because of a better result by Hinds Motorsport, and of course Cosmo Psyche with just 5 points are last in the standings at the moment. And of course, with Ben Willis not driving for the team, they have to find a new primary driver too, so problems maybe at the team? Well, we'll hopefully see if they can get them resolved by the next round. And of course, the next round at the A1 ring in Austria, a very, very short circuit. Expect quick laps, frenetic action, and a lot of brilliant racing to go on there. But until that time, I'm Josh Reynolds. I've been your host of the Supercup Show, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time, where we'll be reviewing the Austrian Grand Prix. Goodbye for now.